Fantasy VII, the 1997 Japanese role-playing game by Square that is considered to be a commercial and critical success, selling over 12.8 million units worldwide. Considered to be one of the greatest games ever made, Final Fantasy VII's story still grabs the audience's attention 20 years on, resulting in the 2020 Final Fantasy VII Remake. In today's episode, we go through how the composer Nobuo Uematsu's approach to the music elevated the gaming experience, and how this music has stood the test of time, even winning the Game Awards for Best Music and Score more than 20 years later. Are you ready? Let's get to it. When I played video games as a kid, the idea of having one of the main characters killed off was not something I thought was even possible back then. Sure, some characters would get hurt throughout the story, but at the end, they would always be alright. Or so I thought. In Final Fantasy VII, the character Aerith is killed in front of us, and as the gamer, we are helpless to stop it. This is the piece that Nobuo Uematsu wrote for this specific moment. He intended the piece to be sad but beautiful, rather than an overly emotional piece, which made the emotions of this shocking moment feel even more real. Uematsu made the decision to approach the music for Final Fantasy VII the same way as if it was for a film score, deciding to focus on the emotion of each scene rather than trying to write a defining theme for the game. Uematsu said that he had a sense that it was going to be a really good project after writing the opening theme and seeing the cinematic to accompany it. I think it's safe to say that he was right. So let's dive in and find out a little bit more about the composer. Who is Nobuo Uematsu? Born in Kochi Prefecture, Uematsu is a self-taught pianist beginning at the age of 11 or 12. After graduating from university with an English degree, he played in amateur bands and composed music for TV commercials. One day in 1985, when working at a music rental shop in Tokyo, a Square employee asked if he was interested in composing music for a game. Uematsu agreed, viewing it as a great opportunity to make some extra cash on the side. And you know, I just have a feeling that it worked out really well for him. He composed for a few games, none of which gained much recognition, and it wasn't until he was asked to compose for what would become the company's most successful franchise that his music was recognized. You guessed it, it was the Final Fantasy franchise. How did you know? How did you guess? You're so clever. His compositions for the franchise sparked his popularity and is attributed to increasing the awareness of video games and the music. Prior to working on the 7th installment of the franchise, Nobuo had already solely composed the previous 6, making him well equipped to handle the task of composing for 7. The story of Final Fantasy VII follows Cloud Strife, a mercenary hired by Avalanche to fight against a world-dominating corporation called Shinra, who are slowly destroying the planet. Along the journey, Cloud is joined by others as they chase down Sephiroth, a super cool villain. I mean, just look at the guy. Evil, but super cool. Now, Uematsu had originally intended to use CD quality music, but opted for MIDI-like sounds produced by the PlayStation sequencer, as the trade-off for higher quality music impacted the gameplay negatively. Unlike the Nintendo that had only 8 channels for music, the PlayStation 1 had 24 channels, 8 for sound effects and 16 for the score, which aided in Square's decision to switch to the PlayStation, a decision that I'm pretty sure PlayStation are pretty chuffed about, considering that Final Fantasy VII was the second highest grossing game for the PlayStation 1 just being behind Gran Turismo. Now I'm currently learning to write orchestral music, and from what I have learned, there seems to be some building blocks used when writing music. There's the melody, the harmony, a counter melody, some rhythmic movement, and sometimes an ostinato. And these individual building blocks are then distributed very cleverly to certain instruments in the orchestra to create the specific sound that the composer is going for. So here is a rough piano sketch I made up of the track called Oppressed People from Final Fantasy VII. It's a super gritty track from the game that suits the setting in the story perfectly. Now we have a rhythmic bass, some keys to add more movement to the piece and provide harmonic information, and a melody on top. Now the same building blocks are used for the original and the remake, but look at the many different ways they present this track throughout the game to achieve a very specific feeling for each track and for each specific moment. And I think the team have done a wonderful job in taking this original score and the original building blocks and honouring that, and then just adding more to make the specific atmosphere that is required for the scenes in the remake. I think they've done a great job. So the remake appears to be about 10 to 15% of the original game, and it looks like they're going to take the story and split it up into different parts. Now the effect of expanding 10 hours of gameplay into about 40 hours means that there's going to be a lot more additional content and a lot more additional music, which I am all here for. I mean, what is this track? It's amazing. It's incredible. I love it. Groovy. Perfection. Amazing. I mean, it's good, right? Now, Remake employs adaptive music in its gameplay wherein multiple arrangements of a particular track are played simultaneously, which fade in and out with the player's actions, such as entering or exiting a battle. Arrangements also shift within a battle depending on the emotions the developers wanted players to experience from moment to moment. Because cutscenes in remakes have voice dialogue, the sound team needed to rearrange some tracks to accommodate this change, but they were careful to preserve the original melodies. This allowed the team to cater the emotions for each moment in a very specific way that they were unable to do in the past, and I think it just enhances the story, and you can really tell that in the remake. Now, of course, I can't not have a video about Final Fantasy VII music without mentioning One Winged Angel, can I? So let's get into it. One Winged Angel is considered to be one of the most popular tracks of the entire franchise, and there's this great video made by Polygon where they interview Nobuo Uematsu about the writing process, and I just find it quite interesting. It's worth the watch. In the video he mentions how he wrote little pieces of music here and there and ended combining them all to create One Winged Angel. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear this track, it makes me feel unsettled, nervous, it makes me feel like something bad is going to happen, and I think that's precisely what we're meant to be feeling. It is precisely what the track is aiming to make us feel. It's the final boss battle with Sephiroth, and through the entire game, we have been continuously shown how strong he is and how weak we are in comparison, that this moment needs to be full of tension and fear and all of that good stuff. Now, there are some things that I think can't be taught. I do believe some people are born with a natural tendency or leaning towards a particular interest. And I mean, I don't know that from Nobuo Uematsu, only he would know that, but I think he clearly has the years of experience and practice and study that allows him to write these really wonderful melodies and pieces in a variety of genres. But I also do think as a composer he has the ability to go, this is the emotion required for that scene, and this is the best piece of music to accompany it so the players feel it. And of course, like anything, that could just be a skill that you develop through time, but maybe it's just me. I just think he does that really so well, and I just thought it was worth a mention. For someone who has played these Final Fantasy games since I was a child, one of the reasons that I keep on returning to playing these games is, firstly, yes, the story, the characters are amazing and interesting, and the arcs are so exciting, and the town and everything is really cool. But if I know that I can put on the game and I'm going to hear Nobuo Uematsu's music whilst I play the game, it's going to be like, oh yeah, it's a bit more incentive for me to play it because I get to hear these wonderful pieces with the story. Now, I really do believe that Nobuo Uematsu's music has stood the test of time, and I think it will. In 2020, the Final Fantasy Remake won the award for the best score and music. His compositions are performed by orchestras worldwide. In 2004, the Summer Olympics, music from Final Fantasy VIII was played, and you just type in Final Fantasy covers on YouTube and you'll just find countless of people covering these amazing tracks. And as a fan of the franchise and as a fan of his music, it just makes me happy to see whenever his music gets even a more additional recognition. His music stands on his own, but it's always nice as a fan of the work when someone covers it or you see something in the media about it, you're like, oh yay, like you're rooting for them. And I just feel really lucky that I got to play these games and listen to that music from such a young age, because as a person who's interested in music, and I'm gonna call myself a music lady, as a music lady, I like to think that maybe just like a 1% of his creativeness has seeped into my brain, because I've heard those tracks for so many hours. I guess it's just wishful thinking. Now, if anything, I hope this video has potentially piqued some of your curiosities to go listen to the music and play the game if you haven't, but I'm guessing the only people who've clicked on this probably are fans of Final Fantasy, but you never know. Thank you for watching, and until next week's episode, bye.